Welcome to the world of Rowan Astrology. I'm David Charles Rowan. And before we begin exploring the gold mine of astrology, please remember to like and subscribe. This channel would be nothing without your kindness and support, so please feel free to return and explore the growing content. And of course, your comments are always of value. So truly, thank you. Today's video, we're looking at the astrology of the Reform Party in the UK and that of its current leader, Nigel Farage. This has been recorded in 2026 before the Macclesfield by-election. So we shall see what we shall see. First of all, as mentioned already, both of these birth charts, the birth times have been doused with a pendulum. I've done my best to verify them against the person's biography in the case of Nigel Farage. So we have to take the houses with a little pinch of salt. You can take it that the planetary positions and the aspects between them are written in pen, but the house positions are written in pencil. But just as an idea, the Reform Party itself has three objects here from the Sun, Mercury, and Pluto in Capricorn, which suggests that it could be a professional organization. It has Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius, which in one sense means that it's in favor of humanitarianism from the Jupiter, but in another sense has a disdain for humanitarianism with the Saturn. It could work with humanitarian principles. Then again, it could be outside of the mainstream, outside of the norm, and it could, in political terms, be a misfit. Mars is in Aries at the time of its inception, which suggests that it could have an aggressive, punchy approach, which could ruffle feathers or even perpetuate acts of violence. Or if it has failures or things it disagrees with, it could go into a sulk, switch off, become disinterested, or become enraged as a result. So, I would expect some tantrums from this party. Not the members, well, the members make up the party, but not the individual leaders, but the party as a phenomenon. This party also has Neptune opposing the moon at its inception. Now, the moon in Virgo suggests that its drive is towards being organized and analytical and accurate and, being intelligently situated. But Neptune, the planet of disorganization and chaos, is opposing the moon at the time of its inception, which suggests that it keeps undermining itself and it keeps self-sabotaging. So whereas it might have an emotional need for organization, it keeps facilitating its own bedlam and chaos. And that's just the party in a general sense. At the moment, obviously, this isn't an accurate birth time. It's not been verified. But it does appear, just from the doused birth time, that Pluto is moving through its 11th house. So it's having a stirring impact on the collective consciousness. Not for very long, though. You notice that Pluto is, in fact, getting very close to the 12th house cusp. Now, Pluto moves at about 2 degrees a year. So if this birth time is accurate, then this suggests that in about 2 to 2.5 years from now, Pluto will go into Reform's 12th house, and then it will seem to sort of evaporate. Its power will become faded and jaded, and that will be in play for, now let me work this out, there's a total of 12 degrees, 12 degrees plus 30, it's 42 degrees. Maths isn't my strong point. So 42 degrees, Pluto moves at about 2 degrees a year. So half of 42 is 21. So that's a languishing of 21 years. That's a possibility. Then again, it could just descend into utter chaos during that period of time as well. So that's all dependent on the Dow's birth time being pinpoint accurate. We shall find out. What's happening in a way that we can verify is the relationship between planets to planets. We have to take the moon with a pinch of salt because the moon moves quickly through the day, and also ignore house changes and aspects to the ascendant or the midheaven. But everything else we can look at. So Pluto is conjunct reforms Jupiter from now all the way until the end of December. These time maps, these parts are like bell curves. So there's always a like a build up and a fade away. The slower the planet, the longer the build up and fade away. The faster the planet, the shorter the build up and fade out. Pluto is the slowest planet, so the fade out from a Pluto transit lasts about 2 months. So for the whole of 2026, Pluto is conjunct Jupiter's, the reforms Jupiter, which suggests it has crisis of confidence to do with its sense of protection and also its relationship with foreign nationals and foreign affairs. It's intense. Wherever you find anything plutonic, there aren't any grey areas. There's no nuance or moderation. Everything is extreme. And so it pitched its flags literally into extremism, racism, radicalism, and it'll either live by that sword or die by it. And that process is taking place for the whole of 2026. Pluto is sextile its Chiron, which suggests that from around mid-February, certainly through the whole of the rest of 2026, Pluto's sextile its Chiron suggested it could go through some kind of internal healing process, which is actually good for itself as a party. Neptune is sextile its Saturn, which for the whole of this year, which suggests that it's got a good relationship with the collective consciousness. Quite literally a wave in its favor. Neptune is sextile its Jupiter, the old ruler of Pisces. This begins to build up in April and is in play all the way through until around the spring of 2027. So this, along with the other Neptune transit, both suggest that it's kind of riding on a good wave, you know. Uranus is trying its Saturn. That suggests that it's avant-garde, kind of being somehow an outsider, something different to the norm, is actually going to dovetail into conventional politics or conventional life. And it could kind of find itself with a sense of kudos or a sense of respect in the political arena. That process begins to build up through April and is in play from the end of May 2026 until about the end of April 2027. So these are long-term dynamics. There's a little bit here at the end of June. Jupiter's square its Mars, so there's a hiccup of some kind in June. This begins to build up, today on the 18th, and it will fade out by about the 10th of July. So there's some kind of issue that could cause an annoyance, a problem, something aggressive, something violent, something depressing in that position of time. And immediately after that, Jupiter is trine its Uranus. Sorry, Uranus is trine its Jupiter. So again, it could have some kind of relationship with international things through computing technologies. So it could find a pathway through by computer technologies, clever use of language, clever use of social media and things like this. So reforms seem to be adept at digital marketing. They've obviously got the money to hire some very good people who are excellent communicators and very good at persuasion language, NLP, putting hypnotic expressions into things as well. Even the name reform is a very clever piece of neuro-linguistic Uh, yes, tomfoolery. There's a fly in the ointment here. Saturn is going to be square its sun. This suggests it goes through a downbeat kind of sense of crisis of confidence. This begins to build up through June, and it goes exact on the 3rd of July and is in place all the way through into the beginning part of 2027. This suggests that something prompts reform to look at itself, to ask itself questions like, what are we for? What are we doing? Where are we going? What are we about? So something's going to happen that causes it to kind of have an abrupt halt and bring the juggernaut to a stop, and then it stops to think about itself for a bit. Might even have some kind of rebrand, but there's something about its identity that isn't gelling right, and it needs to have a rethink about that. Coincident with that, Jupiter is opposing reformed Saturn. This is at the beginning of July. It starts to build up towards the end of June, around the 20th of June, and it fades away by about the 15th of July. This suggests that there's a problem with its relationship with political system and its relationship with how it's perceived in society. There's something that's out of tune, as it were. Jupiter opposing Jupiter suggests again in July there's a 2 week period of it having a slump in optimism. That recovers at the end of July with the Jupiter trine the Chiron. And then Jupiter is square its Uranus. There could be some kind of technology gaffe, a badly placed post, some kind of leak of some form, something goes wrong or awry. But there's something that happens either the last week of July, first week of August, in that time period, which could be unfavorable. Uranus is sextile their Chiron. This looks like something or someone technological, some form of electronic computing helps or comes to its rescue. So there's a paramedic or lifeguard at hand coming through the digital sector. It's not a surprise. Jupiter is sextile its node, which suggests from the 1st of October into the beginning of 2027, a sense of optimism will return and it'll have a sense of direction again. Jupiter square the part of fortune, however, suggests that the mood isn't good for the back end of the year, and it could go into a bit of a dip of emotional sort of floundering. Yes, I wonder what. I wonder why. Jupiter's trine its Venus. At the end of the year, it could be healthy in terms of its finances and donations. Okay, there's a bit of reform. So look at that man, Farage. Right, again, this is Adele's birth time, but I've been able to tally up with his biography. So I'm pretty happy looking at his life events that this fits the person. Right, let's find out what's what. So at the moment, what's going on here? Pluto's moving through his fifth, Saturn and Neptune are going through his seventh house. There's Uranus up here in his ninth house of philosophy. Now, an interesting dynamic about this person with this Gemini Medalan is that there's an observed pattern about his relationship with commitment to projects and essentially work. When he was an MEP, he appeared to like living it up and kind of fleecing the system rather than actually doing work. It might not be the case, but that's the way it seemed. Likewise, his work as a constituent MP in, is it Southsea? No, it's not Southsea, that's near Portsmouth. But anyway, Clacton, that's where it is. Yes, he appears to be kind of off on jet planes and things like this instead of actually working as an MP. But he's on telly, he can do that. So there's a dualism at play. Uranus is going to catch up with that. Not yet. I reckon it'll be maybe 2 or 3 years by the time Uranus reaches his midhaven. But then we might find that he does a disappearing act again, because he might find himself in a situation where he's created the bed of having to do a job, and then all of a sudden he doesn't like the thing he's laying in. That's a distinct possibility. So be careful. Meanwhile, for this year, what? We're in the middle of the year, aren't we? Pluto is making a sextile to his Mars. All right, okay. This suggests that from building up at the beginning of the year all the way through until the first part of 2027, he could be wrestling with issues of power and powerlessness. Almost as if he's, from a soul perspective, he has opportunity to get his hands on levers of power and then is being almost like observed about how he uses it. Does he wield power with wisdom and compassion and dignity? Or does he wield power with um, chaos, with aggression, with tyranny? And there's a possibility that through this period of time, if he's misusing power, then it could come back to bite. So yeah, it wouldn't be if he was one of my clients, I would advise him to refrain from getting involved in any kind of confrontation, because there's a high chance he could find himself on the losing end. Uh, but he's opted to put himself in a confrontational position. Now, building now, in fact, building through May and going exact on the 29th of May, all the way through the rest of the year until the spring or early summer of 2027, Neptune is sitting on top of his Mars. Yes. Now, when people have Neptune square their Mars, it's almost as if their drive, their energy evaporates, and they have sensations a little bit like chronic fatigue, where there's just a day when all they drive and they get up and go, got up and went, sort of thing. If you want a visual image, imagine an ocean and a meteor fireball comes down through the clouds. There's this ball of fire and it plunges into the ocean, and the ocean just puts the fire out, and you just get this bubbling water and loads of steam. And that feeling of either deploying the troops in the wrong direction, being confused about what to do, or just not having the drive to feel things and get things done, to see things through. And to have this sort of notion of having daydreams about how you want things to be, and then you haven't quite got the drive to enact them. Uh, that's building. Um, One thing that's interesting is that there's been a little kind of observation floating about recently that he's avoiding being interviewed. He doesn't want to talk about this or that or that or this. So he's making proclamations of things on videos and then kind of scuppering away behind the shadows. There might be a lot of that over the next year. And coincident with this, Saturn is going to be conjunct his Sun. So Keir Starmer, if you look at Keir Starmer's forecast, he's got Saturn transits as well. And Keir Starmer's going through a kind of like a judgment of harvest or famine. And he's going to be doing the same. So how he's been treating his career and working life, his, i.e. his public image, etc., in the last 30 years will come back, and he'll meet it over the next few months between now and roughly February, March 2027. So if he's been a champion of the people and everybody thinks he's brilliant and he's been working diligently and exactingly and fantastically, he'll be fine. If there's anything lacking or wanting in the way that he's been treating things, then he'll suddenly find that he can't avoid dealing with these issues anymore. And now is the time for him to sort his house out. And if he doesn't, uh, it will just be judged to be very unfavorable indeed. And that process is building up now. And it goes exact on the 24th of June and stays there for the rest of the year. Likewise, Uranus sextile is Mars suggests he could be more rebellious, more out there, as it were, more radical. Um, that this is building now, and it goes exact on the 7th of July, and it'll be in play until July the following year, 2027. So there's a BBC Radio 4 version of Have I Got News for You? It's a radio thing. And they also have different comedies that are satirical on a Friday evening. One of them is a comedy of impressionists called Dead Ringers. And they had a sketch at the end of their show on Friday, last Friday, which was like a battle between Farage and Rupert Lowe, the chap who broke away from Reform and created a thing called Restore. And they're having like a battle of who can be more extreme than the other, trying to outdo one another. When I was 16, I worked in a factory, in a sheet metal factory, and in these stores. And one of the guys I worked with in these stores was a chap with the most amazing voice. He grew up in Yorkshire and then lived in London for a while, then spent, I think, about 15 years in Australia, and then came back to England again. And he would switch accents mid-sentence. He'd say, "Morning, Davy. Have you seen Sodgy Body?" It was really odd listening to him. But he said that in this warehouse he worked in, there was a bloke that they used to call best ones. Because anytime you said anything to this guy, he would say, "Yeah, but the best one was." So if you said, "Oh, I saw a band," he'd say, "Yeah, the best one was, I saw the Beatles." Whatever you did, he had to have outdone it. And so they just had this kind of figure of speech that someone who does that as a temperament, if you say, "Oh, I prang the car," and say, "Oh, the best one was I went over the cliff," right? And this sketch in the Dead Ringers thing was each other, Farage and Lowe, going best ones on each other. Who can out Nazify the other? Um, it was satire, but it was also uncomfortable to listen to in the context of this year. If I'd heard that 25 years ago, it'd just been a funny thing about these kind of silly, stupid right-wing fascist people. But now, of course, with the favors they get from the digital world, um, they're beginning to kind of whip up the kind of rhetoric that we've been sidestepping all these years. Terrible thing. Yes, anyway, he could become more radical from July. And this is building now. So, um, yes, that could be just because he becomes more extreme or because that something happens and they believe they have more power, more defected MPs or something. Or it could be because they're trying to outbid the other guys in "we're more right than you," and off they go saying more and more wildly extreme things. So be prepared for a tsunami of nonsense, right? Yes, Jupiter's square his Mercury just for a couple of weeks in June. That suggests that his communications either fail or can't come across. Oh, sorry, mid couple of weeks in July. This is from the 1st of July until about the 15th of July. So he might go quiet or miscommunicate. There's a bit more of an energy boost in July to back end of July. He said avoiding these midhaven things because we're not looking at those. Jupiter's trine his sun for a couple of weeks. The end of September, beginning of October, he could have a buoyant fortnight. And then Jupiter is square his Neptune. All right. Okay. So his internal propensity for chaos and confusion and muddling things and having memory issues could become more salient in September, all the way through the back end of the year into the beginning of next year. He could seem again to kind of loses pinpoint assertiveness, as it were, being as diplomatic as they can be. Uh, because it's a douse time, we can't really pay attention to the part of fortune or the moon. So that, my friends, is an overview of Nigel Farage. Hello, my name is David Charles Rowan, and this video is a workshop that took place in 2023, exploring the meanings and dynamics